Greetings, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to my Story Spark channel. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when things began to shift. For as long as I can remember, my husband, Oliver, has been my rock, the center of my universe. On the outside, we appeared to be the perfect couple. Everyone admired our relationship, and many thought we were living the dream. Oliver was the quintessential partner, handsome, successful, and charismatic. Even as he approached his late 50s, he carried an undeniable presence that commanded attention wherever we went. But as for me, well, sometimes it felt like I was starting to age a little faster. We've been married for 37 years now, and even though I still get compliments from men, I've learned to brush them off. The ones that bother me the most are from those overly confident types who think a little too highly of themselves. At 53, I've found peace with who I am. My brown eyes, my hair, and the shape of my body, those things have become my pride. I stay active, practicing yoga, and keeping in shape without obsessing over every little detail. Sure, I've gained a few pounds from enjoying good food and wine, but I've learned to accept that as just a natural part of life. I run a retail store now, and I've developed a deep love for books, puzzles, and games. Our children, Robert and Mary, are both grown and live nearby, so we still gather together for family nights often. Our intimacy hasn't lost its spark either. The only thing that's always seemed off was that I never truly felt fulfilled in bed. But strangely enough, it seemed to bother Oliver more than it bothered me. He's always been incredibly attentive in every other way, and I genuinely enjoy his company. But there was always this subtle longing, something more, something missing, that I couldn't quite put my finger on. One year, I invited Oliver to my company's New Year's Eve party. I love dressing up for events like that, and we always had a fantastic time. True to form, Oliver fit right in, mingling effortlessly with everyone. After a while, I left him at the bar and went off to dance. Initially, I danced with some of my female colleagues, but soon enough, some young men joined in. Among them was Harry, our new supply manager. Harry and I had always shared a good vibe. There was an ease to our conversations, and I couldn't help but notice the way he looked at me. He was young, athletic, and very charismatic. I couldn't deny that he was paying me a lot of attention, and I found myself enjoying it more than I should have. After a while, I went to check on Oliver. When I found him at the bar, he looked somewhat detached, almost disinterested. He didn't seem like he was having much fun. "Sorry, darling," I said. "I lost track of time, got caught up in conversation." Oliver glanced toward Harry and replied, "With everyone, or just him?" "Just Harry," I said, shrugging. "We were just having a bit of fun dancing." But then he looked at me with a knowing gaze and said, "I saw the way you looked at him. You like him." His words didn't sound like a question, more like an observation. I was caught off guard. What could I say? It was true, maybe a little bit. Harry's attention had been flattering. "I guess I do enjoy the attention," I admitted, "but I'm not interested in anything beyond a professional relationship." To my surprise, Oliver didn't react with anger. He just nodded and seemed to accept my words. We stayed at the party a while longer, and I made a conscious effort to spend more time with him. When we got home that night, I couldn't deny how strong my attraction to Oliver was. We had an incredible night together, reigniting the connection between us. But the next morning, Oliver asked, "Was it Harry who turned you on?" I paused for a moment before answering honestly, "Maybe a little, but mostly it was you. Seeing you react the way you did made me realize how much I appreciate what we have. There's nothing that compares to it." That conversation opened the door to a new kind of honesty between us. We began talking more openly about our desires and fantasies, and our intimacy became more exciting and frequent. I started experimenting with new lingerie, something I knew Oliver would appreciate. We even began exploring new ways to keep the spark alive, sometimes watching adult films together to explore themes of infidelity and desire. It was a new chapter for us, one where we were both more open and connected than ever before. As time passed, things with Harry at work became more intense. His flirtations were no longer subtle, they were direct, and I couldn't deny that I enjoyed the attention. Every time he invited me to lunch or suggested we go for drinks, I found myself tempted. I always declined, of course, telling myself that I was happily married and that nothing would ever come of it. But deep down, I was starting to wonder if something could. It was one evening while I was sitting with Oliver at home that I realized it was time to have an honest conversation with him. I loved him more than anything in the world, and I didn't want to hurt him, but I also couldn't ignore the growing curiosity I felt about exploring this new side of me. I needed to talk to him, to see if we could push the boundaries of our relationship and maybe even explore something beyond the confines of what we had always known. I turned to him that night, sitting across from him at the kitchen table, and took a deep breath. "Oliver, I've been thinking a lot about something," I began, my voice steady but unsure. He looked at me, his expression kind but cautious. "What is it, Margaret? You seem a little distant lately." "I've been thinking about our intimacy, about what we've talked about before," I continued. "You know how you asked if I was open to exploring something new? Well, I think I'm ready. I want to see what it would be like with someone else." Oliver's face showed confusion, but he didn't get upset. Instead, he quietly listened as I explained. "I've been talking to Harry at work," I said. "He's shown interest in me, and I have to admit, I'm curious. I think it could help us figure some things out. We've talked about exploring these fantasies before. What do you think? Could we make it something more for us?" Oliver remained silent for a while. His eyes were filled with uncertainty, but he didn't stop me from speaking. "I know it's hard to hear, but I want to be honest with you," I added. "I'm not asking for anything permanent with him. I just want to see if it's something that could bring us closer, maybe add some excitement, and I promise, no matter what happens, I'll always come home to you." Oliver didn't immediately react, but there was a subtle shift in his demeanor. He asked me if I had already been with Harry, and when I reassured him that I hadn't, he seemed to relax a little. Still, his silence spoke volumes. He didn't say much, but I could tell that the thought of me being with someone else wasn't as easy for him to process as I had hoped. But the conversation didn't end there. Over the next few days, I kept thinking about what I had proposed. Was this truly something we could explore together? Would it make us stronger or tear us apart? I didn't want to lose Oliver, but a part of me felt like this was an opportunity to discover something new about myself. Finally, I decided to go for it. Harry invited me to spend the weekend with him, and I told Oliver about the invitation. He didn't say much, but I could tell he was conflicted. Still, he didn't try to stop me. "I'll be back on Sunday," I promised, packing my suitcase with dresses, shoes, and lingerie. The excitement of the unknown filled me with anticipation, but there was also a growing sense of guilt. I wasn't sure how I would feel after everything was said and done, but I knew I had to see this through. Oliver seemed uneasy when I left, but he didn't say anything about it. He just nodded and told me to have a good time. As I made my way to the hotel with Harry, the tension between us was palpable. I couldn't deny the chemistry we had, and when I arrived, I could see the desire in his eyes. He complimented me on my outfit, and I could feel the rush of adrenaline as I slipped into something more comfortable. It was thrilling, almost intoxicating, knowing that someone else found me so desirable. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept thinking about Oliver and how he was handling everything back home. I had promised him that I would be honest with him, that I would keep him in the loop about everything that happened. So, I sent him a message. "Hey darling, I've arrived safely. The hotel is amazing. How are you?" There was silence on the other end, and I felt a pang of unease. Eventually, he replied, "Have a great time." But there was something in his words, something cold, almost detached, that made my stomach turn. I pushed the thoughts aside, telling myself that I couldn't worry about him right now. This was about me, about discovering something new and exciting. But as the night progressed, the guilt began to creep in. As Harry and I headed up to our room, the tension between us was electric. When I changed into my lingerie, I couldn't help but notice my phone still buzzing with messages from Oliver. His words weren't the ones I wanted to hear, and the distance between us felt greater than ever. "Are you sure this is what you want?" Harry asked, his voice low and filled with desire. "Maybe we could make this a regular thing if Oliver is okay with it." I froze for a moment, considering his words. Could I really keep living like this? How would Oliver react when I got home? Before I could answer, I noticed a message from Oliver. I opened it, hoping for reassurance, but instead, his words sent a chill down my spine. "Forget us. Divorce." Panic gripped me. I rushed to get dressed, telling Harry I had to go home. "I need to see him. Now!" I rushed out of the hotel room, my heart pounding in my chest. The thrill of the night with Harry had quickly turned into something much darker, something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. My mind raced as I thought about Oliver's message. Divorce. The word echoed in my mind like a cold, cruel reality. I barely remembered the drive back home. My thoughts were a whirlwind of guilt, confusion, and fear. Had I made a mistake? Could I ever fix what I had just started to unravel? Oliver's words haunted me as I pulled into the driveway. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a cage. When I walked through the door, I saw Oliver sitting in the living room. His face was a mask of calm, but his eyes told the truth. There was pain, disappointment, and something I couldn't quite place. His hands were folded tightly in his lap, his gaze fixed on the floor. "I'm home," I said, my voice trembling slightly. Oliver didn't immediately respond. He just looked at me, his silence louder than any words. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft but steady. "Did you do it?" he asked, his gaze never leaving mine. I took a deep breath. I did, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But it wasn't what I thought it would be. I was curious, but now I don't know if I can live with the consequences. Oliver nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "I see. And now you want to come back? You want to fix this?" I didn't know how to answer. The truth was, I didn't know if things could go back to the way they were. Could we go back to our comfortable life? Or had I broken something that could never be repaired? "I don't know," I said, my voice shaky. "I don't know if I can fix this, but I want to try. I love you, Oliver. You're my everything. I never meant to hurt you." His eyes softened for a moment, but the hurt still lingered. He stood up slowly, walking toward me. "You need to understand, Margaret," he said softly, "that what you did, it wasn't just about you, it was about us, and it's going to take more than words to fix it." I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. I had known deep down that I couldn't just expect everything to be okay with a simple apology. I had crossed a line, and now I had to face the consequences. Oliver walked past me without saying anything more. heading toward the stairs. I stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do next. My heart ached with regret, but I knew that this was the reality I had created. There was no turning back now. That night, we didn't speak much. I lay in bed, unable to sleep, thinking about everything I had done, wondering if there was still a chance for us to find our way back to each other. I thought about Harry, about the brief thrill I had felt, and the deep emptiness that followed. I had been looking for something I couldn't define, but I had found nothing but confusion and pain. By morning, I had made my decision. I would talk to Oliver, truly talk to him, and figure out if we could rebuild our trust. I didn't know what the future held, but I was determined to face it with honesty. When I went downstairs, Oliver was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in his hands. He looked up when I entered, and for the first time since I came home, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. A hint of hope, maybe, or perhaps just the exhaustion of the past few days. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I know I've hurt you, and I know it's going to take time, but I want to fix this. I want to rebuild what we had." Oliver looked at me for a long moment before he spoke. "I'm not sure if I can forgive you yet, Margaret, but I'm willing to try, for us." His words, though guarded, gave me a sliver of hope. Maybe we could work through this, maybe not, but for the first time in days, I felt like there was a chance for us to heal. And so, we began again. Slowly, cautiously, but with the determination to find our way back to each other. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would be uncertain, but we were both willing to try.